So Checkpoint, a highlight of the season. Like I think it's one of the very best episodes of
too.
season 5. It would go in the top 10 for me of season 5.
Blood Ties is a great episode.
Yeah, no, it's actually it's certainly solid. I think there's a lot of good drama. Like obviously the the stuff that stands out as a bit grating is the get out from Dawn.
Yeah, I know people really hate that. I think the problem with the get out is that they repeat it in season 6. I think if they hadn't
that's a bit weird, isn't it? They do, because another character uses it at one point.
Glory uses it at the end of this season. She has a similar one. I think, look...
that might be.
We'll get to it. But what I'm going to say is this 14-year-old girl just had the biggest revelation dropped on her. I'd probably be screaming, get out too at my family. So,
I think yeah, no, I think it works for the drama. I think, again, Michelle Trachtenberg is really good in the episode, and it's like a really big episode for the season, for the drama of the season. And so much of it, the way it plays out, is really effective. And they go darker than you expect, because they go to like the almost like, she cuts herself. So
we're going to self-harm territory,
Yeah, it goes into that stuff. So it's actually pretty bold for them to go as dark as they do. Summer's Blood, that whole thing. So that's a nice way to bring it back around to something a little bit more positive. But Trachtenberg's great.
She's so good in this one.
I think sometimes with Dawn, it can just fall down to some people find it a bit annoying to watch a grumpy teen on a show, regardless of whether it's true to life or not. Teenage characters are not great to watch on TV shows because it's just a bit, they're annoying to watch. Yeah. Whereas in real life, you just deal with the fact that they're annoying, and hopefully they grow out of it. But
particularly in a show where the other characters are now adults, because we see a very similar thing. I mean, he's written much worse, but we do see a similar thing happen with Connor on Angel. Fan reaction to him were very similar. Suddenly having a sullen teenager in the midst of like all of these demon fighters was very jarring. So I think Dawn receives a similar... I mean, Dawn's a better written character than Connor is. And I think Michelle is a better... I don't actually think it's Vincent's fault over on Angel. I think the writing of the character was just bad. But Dawn and Connor, you see those similarities of people not liking the sullen teenager character, despite the fact that they both have very clear reasons to be the way that they are. Can be quite grating. But I think, obviously this episode, again, we continue the Buffy birthday tradition of something terrible happening on her birthday. Like, poor Buffy is just got to
keep forgetting this is a birthday episode.
Yeah, it is. And that opens up some funny stuff. I love the bit where they're giving the presents and she's given the beautiful dress from Willow and Tara, and Anya's like, oh, it's so pretty. Oh, I wish it was mine. And then she's like you all weren't thinking the same thing. And Giles is like, I'm fairly certain I wasn't. I've got one just like it at home. I always liked that little exchange.
Yeah, that's good.
This is the episode where the gang finds out who Dawn is. Obviously, Dawn finds out as well, but they find out at the beginning. So we get to see, they have a bit of fun with that, with the gang not really knowing how to act around her, and Anya's whole, you make a very pretty little girl. It's like, thanks, Anya, that's helping. And obviously Dawn starts to clue into, bits and pieces here and there. And then I think a lot of people give Dawn a really hard time, but you really have to look at what this girl goes through. And I think how do you deal with this sort of revelation? Like, people have likened it to like people finding out they're adopted, and like I can kind of see the comparison, but by the same token, it's not really the same thing, because you finding out you're adopted, you're still a person. Like it's like you said earlier when she asks her family, like, how long have I been alive? How old am I? And they're like, you're 14, sweetie. You know that. She's like, no. When did the monks? And they're like, 6 months ago. And she's like, I've only been real for 6 months. It's like,
it's crazy to wrap your head around.
An adult probably couldn't deal with that, let alone a teenager. And I think that even though it is very dark and possibly triggering to some people, I think the self-harm angle is very appropriate, because you would do something like this if you found out that you weren't real, because that is, sometimes people do self-harm for that, to feel alive, to feel like they're connected. And Dawn is obviously doing it. It's like she says, is this blood? Is this real blood? It can't be me. I'm not a key. I'm not a thing. And it's like, I think her cutting herself is a very realistic reaction to have to that sort of revelation. And I mean, the fact that she manages to deal with it so well after this first episode is truly amazing, because it's such an existential crisis. You know, you couldn't trust any of, it's like she says when they say, you need to go to school. She's like, well, the monks dropped, you know, kindergarten 3 to year 8 in my head. Let's see if they put the next one in. It's like, it's just such a big thing. And I think that the fandom doesn't give Dawn enough credit for like what she must be going through in discovering this about herself. It's just truly insane.
I agree. I think Dawn gets overly criticised. A rough ride. Trachtenberg definitely deserves more praise than sometimes she gets. Probably a bit more with them on earlier viewings, but as I've rewatched it more, I've come more around to what we're saying now than...
Yeah, me too.
A lot of sympathy for Dawn.
She burns her diaries.
A really powerful scene.
Yeah, that's a really powerful scene. And again, the symbolism there of her burning these diaries that are supposedly her memories, you know, but they're all fake. So it's like her saying, this doesn't matter, you know, none of this is real. If it was created so easily, it can be destroyed so easily. It's because, of course, Dawn, bless her little heart, she has this bad habit of eavesdropping at exactly the worst time possible. So, of course, she eavesdrops and she hears Buffy say, she's not real, she's not your daughter, she's not my sister. But then she goes on to explain it, but Dawn doesn't hear that part. So, of course, she just hears the bad part.
One weaker moment I might criticise.
Just because
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure Buffy would actually pull it like that. Yes,
even if she is trying to explain something away. No, I agree. But then, as we were talking about before, this episode has yet another wham moment for us. You know, like this season is just full of these moments that just make you go, Jesus Christ, what are they going to pull out next? We have Ben is Glory, which is just so fantastic. And again, we get another great scene between Glory and Dawn. I love Dawn trying to like find out a bit more about the key, you know, when she's all like, you know, well, what does it do? If there's a key, then there has to be a lock. It's like, yes, great Summers logic there. You Tuppy so tense in that scene, not just because she's so close to Dawn, but because Dawn's the key. This is what she wants, and she's like right there. It's insanely tense. And of course, you have that great showdown with Willow and Tara doing the teleportation spell, which again, we're going to have to talk a bit about Willow this season, because there is some great foreshadowing for Willow this season. Tough Love, when we talk about it in particular, is full of foreshadowing for Dark Willow. It's fantastic. Seems insignificant, but it becomes very, very important. Summer's blood. It's just like mine.
Dawn gives Buffy the present.
Yes.
The present, and it's like the photograph of them as a family. And Buffy's reaction, it's so touching. You can understand. It's like, oh my God, this reminds me. They
all kind of look a little bit like, and then Dawn's just like, well, geez, don't get all movie of the week. It was just too cheap to buy an actual present. You know, again, like that balancing of humor and pathos is really good. But I think, you know, from here on out, I feel like most of the episodes are actually really strong. I think there's maybe a couple that I think are maybe a little bit weaker, but for the most part, I think from here on out we get a really good run of like really strong episodes that I think really bring the Glory storyline and the arc together. And we get some really, really good stuff. But however, the next two episodes I'm not too fond of. So I'm guessing you are, so I will let you go first and then I'll give my opinion. So we've got Crush and I Was Made to Love You, and they're both kind of linked together because we're focusing a bit on Spike's obsession here, and they're definitely linked in regards to that. So Crush, why don't you give your thoughts on Crush?
Crush is a very enjoyable episode. I think there's a lot of fun with Spike and the whole love triangle. The women in his life driving him just nuts. But
he's such an incel.
Yeah, well, okay, but it works in this. It works for the episode. Like, you can take a broader view and say, okay, this is why he's such a, whatever character. But for this episode, it actually works. And it's a great way to bring Drew back. It's a great
love seeing
one
Drew
shot
again.
for.
I always love seeing Drew. She's fantastic.
And I also like that she, a bit like Spike has done in the past, makes a memorable entrance into Sunnydale because it's on the train and she's like killed the people and yeah. So seeing Drew back is wonderful. Like just her and Spike just briefly rekindling some of their spark is really great to see. I love the scene with them in the club. Them,
that's a good one.
Sort of on the run, on the lash again in a way, and feeding off people, and just Spike. See, when it comes to the drama with Spike this season, I feel this is an important episode just because it's like he's so close to returning to his old ways. So, and he's really on that edge. But ultimately he decides not to. So I sort of feel why this is an important episode in his stuff this season. But it's just a really fun, entertaining episode. Like the way the whole thing plays out at the end. So the way Harmony is used, she's like hilarious in the episode. And I know you can read a lot into it and say, yeah, it's kind of sexist, it's kind of whatever with Spike, but I think it just works for the episode, for what they're going for, and just to have these great characters all in the same scene and the way they're playing off each other is so good. And like, again, you can say it's kind of sexist, but I think the way you're meant to read it is then Spike is just kind of sexist. And he's the villain in the episode. So if the villain is sexist, it doesn't really count. It doesn't really affect things where you can be turned off by the show, sort of thing. But it's a very entertaining episode for me. I enjoy it a lot.
I will say about Crush, it does have individual scenes that I do like. Like I mentioned before, I think the scene where Spike is telling Dawn about the the murder that he committed is kind of funny. I always love Drusilla. She's always lots of fun, and I think Harmony's pretty funny in this too. Again, this episode, the ending of it, I actually quite like, because the ending very clearly says to Spike, you suck, and Buffy hates you and is disgusted by you, and she's literally closing the door in your face. So that, to me, is a good conclusion. But again, because we know the trajectory of Spike's character and where they're going to take him, in retrospect, for me, this episode's just a little too gross. So we'll leave it at that, because we have gone into Spike a bit too much, and me saying anything more will just be redundant. But again, I think... Yeah, if say, for example, if season 5, if this really had been the end of Buffy, like we talked about it was supposed to, I actually don't think I would have as big a problem with Spike as I do. But because, again, so like if we looked at just this episode, if it was just this episode by itself, I probably wouldn't have much of a problem with it, because it is very clearly saying Spike is disgusting, Spike is in the wrong, Spike does not deserve Buffy. And they prove that at the end of the episode by Buffy disinviting him to the house and saying, stay the hell away from me. That's a good ending. But because we know that this doesn't stick, and that then Spike then goes on, that like I said, I think for me it's coming from that retrospective, looking at Spike through the lens of season 6 and where they're going to take his character, unfortunately then means that a lot of his actions in season 5, it's hard to separate them. So Crush, there are parts that plus I do actually find it really funny when he's trying to like date Buffy, but like it's not like she doesn't know that it's like a date. When they're in the car, or like, and he offers her the flask, and she's like, "Ew!" And he's like, "It's not blood, it's bourbon." Ew. And then like when he goes to open the door for her, and she's like, "What is happening here?" Like she's so confused. She has no idea what's going on. And I also love when she's all like, "That chip in your head, that's just keeping you in place. You're like a serial killer in prison." women marry them all the time. It's like, that's not the point, Spike. So yes, well, I do think, there's definitely funny bits in this episode. And it's not a bad episode per se. It's just the trajectory of Spike's character. But of course, then that leads into I Was Made to Love You, which definitely has sexist overtones and is definitely about like obsessive love and perfect love and what we do in the name of like, it's basically Incel the episode, because this is where we meet Warren.
Yeah.
This is the episode where we meet.
Yeah, one of the worst when it comes to scumbags. And this is something which people talk about a lot when they debate different villains in the Buffyverse, and where a lot of times they sort of see Warren as one of the worst because he is a human being, like, so.
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't have the excuse of he's a vampire, he doesn't have a soul or anything like that. No. Yeah. That's why I've seen people say that Warren, is the scariest villain. And to a certain degree, I do agree with that, because you're not going to come across Angel or Spike in the real. I mean, you might come across people like Spike, but you're not going to come across, vampires or demons or gods in the real world. You are going to come across misogynistic men who believe that women owe them everything, which unfortunately is Warren. And you definitely see that in this episode. I mean, the April bot alone, I mean, she's hilarious and was supposed to be played by Britney Spears, which would have been really funny if that had happened. Did you know that?
No, I did. And it's something I was going to bring up. It's an interesting footnote. Yeah. And they went with the right choice. I think the actress does a good job, and it just would have been too distracting. Yeah,
it would have become like Britney Spears rather than Buffy, and that's why it would have become like, it just would have been too much of a gimmick, I think, because that's not Buffy. Buffy doesn't have huge guest stars. I think the biggest one they really had was like John Ritter, who by that point was kind of not even really a massive star anymore anyway. He'd kind of, past his peak a bit. So
but I think at the time that was quite a big
but the girl playing the April bot does a really good job. She's really fun and funny.
I can see the idea of them casting Britney Spears, but I think they definitely went with the right choice in the end. And it's one of those things, it makes me wonder if was a bit of a back and forth between executives and the writers, where the executives might have been pushing for Britney Spears just because of the attentions it would have got.
Was also friends with Sarah at the time, so I think that was another reason that she was maybe going to be on the show, is that she and Sarah were friends at that point anyway. So
interesting.
I think I Was Made to Love You is, again, one of those episodes in season 5 which is not bad, but I don't think it's as good as some of the others.
I agree.
It's just kind of a middle of the road episode, and it really doesn't do much for the established canon except for really introduce Warren, who as we know will become a bigger player next season.
It's another weird one because again it's going more into sci-fi.
Yeah.
I like it. I think I like it for the themes of it. I do like it because once again, I think it's partly fallout from Buffy and Riley and Buffy.
Yes.
And I don't mind, even though I'm against the way that was written. It's still a boyfriend who she was with for a while, so
it makes sense that she's still.
It.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that actually gives her a lot of motivation, the way she deals. So some of the scenes later in the episode, I think they are the high point of the episode. Like largely the episode's just, it is pretty forgettable. Like it's a solid enough episode, but the first half of the episode, I think Miranda's a little bit, I think overall it's not the most memorable, but it's sort of the end of the episode, which makes it a little bit more memorable. And I mean, how Warren ever got a girlfriend like Katrina?
I know. Steven and I were saying that. We were like, because he's exactly the same here. It's not like he's any different. He's still telling her to shut up and go away. And if you look at the the April bots like commands, they're really alarming. It's like locate Warren, make Warren happy. Or when Buffy's like, can you cry? And she's like, good girlfriends don't cry. Crying is blackmail. It's like,
Yeah,
Jesus
it's so
Christ.
cringe and creepy.
So many red flags. I'm guessing he and Katrina probably have only been together for a couple of months, and luckily the girl got out when she did, although, well, we'll talk about Katrina.
We'll talk about that when we get there.
But I think I Was Made to Love You, just a bit of a middle of the road episode, and really it's only the last 2 minutes where it really makes you like, ooh, ouch.
Well, yeah, but also, as I said, the stuff with April and Buffy, I quite like that stuff as well. So
when they're sitting on the swings.
Yeah, thematically, I think it's quite an interesting episode. It's just the episode as a whole, I don't think is that good. With Warren, they're tapping a little bit into the stuff they did with Parker in the last season. It's almost this sort of like very real sort of douchebag / monster. Then unfortunately, like you don't necessarily find him that interesting to watch, but unfortunately, it's just someone you do come across in real life, like quite true to life. A gut punch that is just to
end my God, episode. Yeah, I know. It's just
because it's once again Joyce is getting back up. Really,
she's going on a date.
She has a good experience.
She has that gorgeous little exchange with Buffy when she comes home, and she's like, "Oh no, I left my bra in his car." Mother!
Yeah, that's really funny.
I love that. Yeah. But yeah, and then Buffy comes home and the flowers are there, and it seems like Joyce has finally met like a nice guy, and then you just see the body on the couch, and it's like, oh my God, you're it's like your heart just drops.
Yeah, it drops.
Because you know what's coming. Now, we can talk about the body because I have seen this series so many times. I do not, but I will say, like I said, I didn't watch it this time around just for personal reasons. It's hitting a little too close to home. But the body is obviously one of the greatest television episodes. The way that it's written and acted, and I always remember when I watched this episode. I don't actually watch The Body that often, even when I'm not.
I understand. I don't either, to be honest.
But I'm assuming you watched it this time around. How did you go when you were watching it?
I think the experience of dealing with death and processing death, like pretty much everything in the episode and the way the episode is paced, all the character reactions, there's some wonderful acting from everyone in the episode. Yeah, no, it does really sum up the weird, surreal nature of dealing with death and coming to terms, because obviously Sarah's acting in the opening part and the way she just sums up that idea of, yeah, this isn't real, this can't be real. She's still going through the stage of accepting that then something has happened like this, and her interactions with the EMTs, I think that's very effective. And I also like the opening of the episode. I like when they do a little fake out where it's them with dinner. It actually reminds me a little bit of what they did in Angel at the start of season 4.
Season 4,
when they had that scene. That's quite clever. But I do like that because it does then nicely transition into the harshness and they play. I mean, this show likes to play with your emotion because it even teases then Joyce gets revived.
Yes, it has that little fake out.
And it's like, oh my God. Because, I mean, watching this at the time, you would probably think, maybe there's a chance he might.
Yes, you would, definitely.
You're not going to be sure. So, but just the whole drama of it is just so well done throughout. Great direction, great dialogue. It just feels like everybody, at some point in their life goes through grief and death and has to face up to this stuff. And it's just very true to life. It's a very depressing episode. Like obviously they have little moments of humor that they work in, which doesn't feel jarring at all. They do it so well, and it's just true to the characters. And I do like the stuff with like Xander and Willow, Anya in that scene, Tara.
Anya in that scene. Oh my God, one of Emma Caulfield's best moments, that speech. I mean, you don't even have to watch the episode to be able to conjure up that speech. It's beautiful and really grasps, I think they really show the different stages of grief well. Like, everyone seems to represent a different stage of grief. And Anya is, obviously confusion and anger, and it's just really just heartbreaking.
Criticism that she shouldn't be this, like, weirded out by the idea of death because of her experiences as a vengeance. There's a complaint, and that doesn't quite feel like accurate, where she seems to be alien to this stuff. So do you think that's a fair complaint?
I do understand where people are coming from when they say that. Like, I definitely do. But I think the difference is, it's not so much that Anya is not familiar with death. I think she's not familiar with death where there is no solid cause. She's seen death for 1,000 years, but she's been causing it. She can trace why these people died. Joyce died from a brain aneurysm. And like she said, she doesn't understand when there's no solid cause. Why can't Joyce just get back in her body? Like, I do understand where people are coming from, but I think, no, it's less about the actual death and more about the fact that, like she said, I mean, I knew her, and then she's just a body. And so I think it's more about that, like death without a solid cause. And I think that's very real to real life, people who lose people from cancer or brain tumors or deaths that are very unexpected. And I think the emphasis on the body, I didn't actually fully really understand until I had these recent experiences that I've had in my family with death, because I found the hardest part, particularly of my cousin's death, because he was so young, was seeing his body at the funeral, because there is that realization of the person isn't there anymore. It's just a body. And I think that this episode being called The Body and having that emphasis, because there is a moment where, I can still remember it, where Sarah just breaks my heart. Giles has come over and he sees Joyce and he starts to go, and Buffy's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. And she's like, we're not supposed to touch the body. And then you just see this look of absolute horror. Yeah, because that's the first time that she's realized it's not my mother anymore. It is just the body. And I think that emphasis, like I said, because I hadn't really experienced close death before this, I just lost, like older relatives that you expect to die when you're young. But because I've had that experience recently of seeing someone I love and their body, it's like I can really understand why this episode is so focused around that concept of the body and where does the person go when they're not in it anymore. So and that's why I couldn't watch this episode. I tried, but I said no, it's too much.
That's
for me
understandable
right
when it's that close, that recent. Yeah,
it just hits us. But a couple of things I just want to note about this episode. So this is the first time we see Willow and Tara kiss on screen, and I remember finding out that Joss Whedon had to fight tooth and nail to let that kiss stay. They wanted to pull it, and he basically said, if you pull the kiss, you have to pull the whole episode. Because he wanted it to come about in a very organic way. He didn't want it to be exploitative, which unfortunately, same-sex kisses back then were quite exploitative. I mean, Cruel Intentions had only come out like a year before, and that had the big lesbian kiss. So I like that. And a little bit of trivia. When Xander puts his fist through the wall, the actual material that the wall was made of caused Alison Hannigan to have an allergic reaction. So if you watch her carefully for the rest of that scene, they only film her from one side because the other side of her face had a really bad reaction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
And then apparently after she finished filming this episode, she actually had to run over to the American Pie 2 set because she was simultaneously filming that. So that's a bit of acting whiplash, isn't it? Going from playing this very serious episode to American Pie 2.
Definitely.
So so that's a little bit of fun trivia with the body. But I mean, I don't think anyone will deny that this is one of Buffy's best episodes, one of the best episodes that Joss has probably ever done. And it's probably one of the best episodes on TV that really captures grief, because I remember Joss talking about how the deliberate non-use of music. There's no music in this episode.
Yeah, that's a great choice.
Because he was saying that hides the pain, and he's not wrong. When you're watching a sad movie and you listen to the music, so you don't have to deal with the emotions on the screen. But if you take the music away, suddenly all you have are the actors, and you really have to deal with the stark reality of what's going on. I think Tara in this episode is beautiful. That moment she has with Buffy when she talks about her
really
own
like that
death.
scene. Yeah,
that's a beautiful scene. I really love that. And I actually I know that some fans and some critics have complained about the vampire attack at the end, but I actually think that it's a wonderful way of showing that unfortunately life continues. Like when someone dies, unfortunately you still have to deal with your reality, and Buffy's reality unfortunately is vampires. So once again, it's showing
and that's once again the dancing between like the supernatural and the real world, and the metaphor, and it works well. It works well because throughout the episode it is literally just this real sort of like realistic drama, but then at the end of the episode, and I think it just makes sense because they're in a vulnerable place. But that makes them more vulnerable when it comes to vampires. That with Dawn, I absolutely love. Me
too. Again, the misdirection.
So heartbreaking, but the misdirection, because when she's talking to her friend in the bathroom, you think she's talking about sort of Joyce.
Mm-hmm.
And it's revealed it's talking about a boy, and just the stuff in the art class is so good. Like the direction. Because I love the stuff with her drawing, and then
the negative space, and all of that.
And then just the rest of the class watching on in shock.
I know, and the fact that they do it without dialogue, again, I think that just makes it that much more powerful. And it just, like I said, I didn't rewatch it this time, but this entire episode is still like just burned in my brain from all of the watches I used to do earlier, because it's just so impactful.
There was did you hear the interesting rumor at the time on the internet?
The theory that when Dawn touches, like everyone thought that when Dawn touched Joyce that she'd somehow reanimate her. Is that what you're talking about?
Like her being the key. She had that sort of power.
I'm glad that wasn't the case, because I think that would have undermined the entire episode. But I do understand why people would have come up with that theory, especially if you desperately want Joyce to be okay and you want Buffy to be okay and stuff like that. So I have heard that, but I'm very glad that was not the case.
No, it's one of those fun theories to look back at and at the time, during the period where you had to wait a week for the next episode, and just all the speculating.
This was Joss's little tribute to like his experiences with grief and all of that. So I think he wanted the episode to be as realistic as possible. I think they even said that like they deliberately did not put Spike in this episode because they wanted it to be human and human emotions. They didn't want to have too many supernatural distractions, and quite frankly he wouldn't really have a place in this episode because there just wouldn't be much for him to do. So I think that was a good choice, and just a really intense, really good episode, but I think one that a lot of fans probably do skip on rewatches because it is so heavy, and it's not exactly a fun episode to sit through. You're not exactly having a good time with this episode. Forever is a good follow-on. Now I do have a question for you with regards to Forever. So I disagree with this, obviously, but a lot of fans say that Angel appearing was fan pandering. What's your opinion on that?
No, I disagree.
Good. We're on the same page then.
Oh, yeah, because like at the end of the day, they've got this special connection, him and Buffy, and when she's lost her mum, I mean, when's a better time for him to...
Exactly.
It's no different than in real life human relations. You would expect... If you hear a family member has lost someone, you come down for support. And
thank you. Good. I'm so glad you're on my side with this. Because anytime someone says this is fan pandering, I want to punch them in the face. Because I'm just like, no, this one makes sense.
It feels natural.
Some of his other appearances, maybe I might concede that they're fan pandering a bit, but not this one. Especially because, and I was saying this to Stephen, and it's at least this is my interpretation. I think it's actually true. Angel is really one of the only, if not the only person that Buffy completely drops her guard around. She has always found him to be a safe space and somewhere that she can be completely vulnerable. And we see that again with this, when she's talking to him in the graveyard and she talks about poor Buffy, she always has so much guilt over everything. She talks about how she wished she could have gotten there, 10 minutes early. And Angel's like, well, they said it wouldn't make a difference. And she's like, they said probably. It probably wouldn't make a difference. And then she says, I haven't told that to anyone. And I'm like, of course, Angel is the first person she tells this to, because we have always seen that she can be vulnerable with him. And obviously, for shipper reasons, I love seeing them together. But for Buffy's sake, because she's so alone, I just love seeing Angel come back and being able to give her that safe space and that comfort that she needs in that moment that she maybe can't get from anyone else, even from like Giles or Willow. She has a bond and a closeness with Angel that is different to everyone else. And like Stephen and I were watching them and we're like, just look at them. They haven't been together for 2 years and they're so comfortable around each other. And you can just see Buffy let her guard down and relax and feel vulnerable and feel safe for a few minutes. And for me, it just really works having Angel in this episode. And I think the fact that he was only in like really one scene was good. Like, we didn't need him there for the whole episode. He came to give Buffy that emotional support that she needed. He got her through that night. And that was basically what she was saying. She didn't know if she was going to get through that night, but once she made it through, that was it.
Because they make it clear in the scene, then they know the score. Like, they know that
absolutely
we can't, this can't turn into anything more.
No. Dawn is feeling so neglected and so lost. And obviously we get a little bit of a hint here about Willow and her being a little bit reckless. What was she trying to do with that book that she left out for Dawn? Do you think that she honestly didn't think that Dawn would try that ritual? Or like, what do you think Willow was playing at there?
I can only think that she intended Dawn to find the book, because otherwise I can't think why she would have done it.
But that's so odd that she would give Dawn access to, like, because she says to Tara later, she's like, I just thought it might answer some of her questions. It's like, but Willow, honey, you knew that there was a resurrection spell in that book. Like, how would you think that she wouldn't try that? It seems very irresponsible of Willow.
Yeah, it probably is. Like, I think when she says that to Tara, I think that's her covering a little bit and maybe scrambling to try and justify it.
Yeah.
But, I think everyone's just in a weird space, a weird headspace. So I think that impacted Willow, her judgment. But yeah, you can definitely see it as foreshadowing and a bit of setting up for later on. And so it's good then we do see a pattern developing, because you can also trace that back to some earlier seasons when she first is trying magic out. And
Absolutely.
Oz is concerned about it at one point.
Yeah. So, I actually think Willow's magic arc has a really good trajectory. It's season 6 that screws it all up. Everything else is actually done really well. And I think this one's done really well. There is a scene in this episode that I absolutely freaking adore. It's only a few seconds long. It's Giles. You see Giles alone in his apartment, and he's listening to the same record that he enjoys listening to in Bat Candy. And
that's so perfect.
I think that's such a beautiful little moment, just to show that Giles as well is feeling the loss of Joyce. And I just think that's they just do a really good job with the fallout and grief over Joyce's death. And it's such a little moment. It's such a throwaway moment. I also like Xander and Anya's moment when they've just had sex and Anya has that whole speech about how, like, they could make life. And Xander's like, Jesus Christ. And she's like, relax. I'm not saying I want to do that with you now. She's saying, it's like she's realizing there's a bit of a deeper meaning to life, like sex is not just sex. It's to create life, and things like that. So I like that they're showing that Joyce's death is spiraling out, and that it's it's got an effect on everyone, because that is definitely what happens when someone dies. I mean, I saw that recently with my family. You start to think about different things. You start to think about your own life. You start to think about what you're doing and where you're going and what can be done in your life. And I think that Forever really explores that really well with the Scoobies.
Addresses the reasons why that's not a good idea, and why that's kind of wrong, and the logic that Tara especially lays out to her is definitely something I agree with.
Me too.
So,
and it is a common theme in magic shows, actually, that you don't tamper with life and death. You know, like magic might be able to do certain things, but when it comes to the natural order of things, you don't mess with that. And I think that that's actually a really good, like, because it's true, you know, like life and death is such big concepts. You don't want to mess with that sort of thing. And I think that this episode, and then of course we get a bit of it in season 6, scene is heartbreaking. Like, I think both Summers girls in that scene, they're both so frustrated with each other and with themselves and with their grief. I think it's a great example of, like, yeah, them just trying to work through this. You know, Dawn accusing Buffy of ignoring her, Buffy trying to say, no, but I need to take care of all of these things. And you know, and what I really love is that Buffy's trying to be the strong one, and she's trying to be the one to say, you can't do this, Dawn, this is wrong. But then the minute you hear the knock on the door, you just see Buffy just revert to a child, and she's just like, Mummy, and just, you know, she forgets everything in that instant, because in that instant she's like, she's back, my mother is back. And then of course that heartbreaking final moment where the girls are just comforting each other.
Again. That's so
it is. And again, Sarah and Michelle, their acting, their chemistry, their dynamic, everything about it is just so good and so heartbreaking. It's a really powerful scene. Yeah. Oh my God, it's heavy.
Yeah, very. Yeah, we'll better move on in a minute. But we also get another great cameo in Doc, another great.
And of course, he will become a bit significant later on. But,
in case people don't know, Joe Gray is most famous for Cabaret. That's what he's famous for.
Oh, yes, of course.
He's the MC Cabaret. Yeah, I didn't realise that first, but then I looked it up.
Oh, he's another one of those character actors, because I'm pretty sure he's in Charmed. I think he's in Smallville. He pops up, you know, around kind of things. Yeah.
And he's a character we get a little bit of at the end of the season. And he's really good. The actor's really good. And he has a genuine sort of threat and menace. And I like the way he ties into the glory stuff. Because I wasn't quite sure when he first appears. And it's made clear he's a demon. I wasn't quite sure if he was always evil or if it's just then he got infected later on and sort of... Because it seems in that episode he is legitimately helping Dawn out, sort of thing.
I'm assuming that he's not so much evil so much as he's just one of Glory's worshippers, and unfortunately that can lead you to do evil things. So I think he's probably just your everyday demon who's hanging around him, and he finds out that Glorificus is here, you know, and she's obviously a name that would be known, you know, through older demon circles. And so I think it's more of that, like, not so much evil, just, you know, worships a god, and that can make people do crazy things. We've seen that throughout all of history. So, you know.
Well, maybe also you could sort of read it as he encouraged, like, Dawn to do the spell because...
which is not a good spell.
Not a good spell and not a good idea. So you could sort of read it as he's being evil in that sense, because if he wasn't, he would have said, no, this isn't a good idea. But But there's just something in that scene where he actually seems a bit legitimate. Like, he is, like... Because he doesn't take her money neither, but, you know, maybe
that's much covered intervention already, so I don't think we need to circle all around the Buffy bot and everything that goes with it. Again.
No, the only thing to comment on is, besides that stuff, the other stuff is good, like the stuff in the desert and her.
Yes, I do like that.
Because that's why it's actually quite funny later on, where they're all confused and it's like,
Buffy's friends in this episode, though, were you frustrated with them? Because it's like, come on, guys, I know Buffy's just lost her mum, but you literally just came across a robot. So how do you not know that this... Like, I was just like, come on, it's like they deliberately made the Scoobies... Okay, maybe Anya and Xander running into her on the patrol, I could maybe excuse that. But Willow, her very best friend, has a one-on-one conversation with her and doesn't figure it out. I am not buying that. It feels like one of those things that, like, they do in sitcoms where they deliberately make the character stupid or out of character just to land a joke. That's what it feels like in this one. Like, they wanted her to be taken in just so they could have the funny gags. I
think also this is Jane Espenson who writes this, but she is a good comedy writer. That is her strong stuff. She writes a lot of good like comedy Buffy episodes, and there's a lot of funny stuff in this episode. It does do other things as well, obviously, but like there's a lot of good comedy, and she does right. I can see where you're coming from. I guess I just defend it because to them, I don't think it would be natural just to jump to, okay, she's a robot.
Well, maybe not a robot, but I mean, they've dealt with doubles before. I mean, especially when she goes for the Angel's lame. His hair goes straight up.
That is so funny.
It's so hilarious, but come on. That being okay, so I will
those
say
instructions like popping up.
Man.
Because I just love the detail, because it's like saying Willow's gay from like
1999 onwards. That is actually pretty funny. I do like that. That's pretty funny. Look, as disgusting as I find the Buffy bot in concept and execution and the violation that it does for Buffy, Sarah as the Buffy bot is an absolute delight. Like, Sarah is having so much fun playing that, and every time she does the little smile where she does I just think it's brilliant. Also, I absolutely love, I really think we should be listening to the other Buffy Giles. Giles, did you hear that? Spike didn't even bother to program my name right. It's like, Giles, Spike built a sex bot of your Slayer. I think we're focusing on the wrong thing here. But, okay. But yeah, so like I said, I find the Buffy bot gross in concept, but Sarah as the bot is just so much fun. So much fun.
Making fun of Giles with the dance and the...
Oh, I know this one. The ancient shamans were getting called upon to do the hokey pokey and turn themselves around. Go so Quest. Cool. I love it. And I also like I like that they bring the first Slayer back, because obviously this has all come about because they did that spell with the first Slayer. So of course it makes sense to bring her back when Buffy is trying to examine her roots. And I think that the dream sequence with the fire and, you know, the way they work the camera there and the way they have the fading shots between Buffy and the first Slayer and the whole death is your gift conversation, I think that's very well. It actually gives me echoes of Restless. You know, it has that kind of feel to it, that kind of eerie, dreamlike feel. And it's very obviously very important, not just in Buffy's journey as a Slayer, but obviously in regards to the finale when we get to it. You know, death is your gift and everything. So I think that's really good. Yeah, I also do think it's funny when Buffy comes across the Buffy bot. I mean, I feel so sorry for her because God in heaven, how disgusted and violated must she feel? But it's also funny to see. It's always fun when you have doppelgangers. You know, doppelgangers are always fun. And the effects have gotten a lot better by now. So it's actually done a lot better than Willow and Dark Willow, obviously. Up through to the Weight of the World. Those, I mean, we'll talk about the gift by itself because you have to, but I think this run of 3 episodes, obviously we're barreling towards the end of the season now, and we get some really good stuff, I think, in these.
It very rarely puts a foot wrong from the last 4 episodes, and like the final 3 I see as a bit of a trilogy anyway.
I do too.
It does feel like an ongoing story that gets complete. But yeah, we can talk a bit about Tough Love, because again, I think that's a really good episode as well. And just the stakes, we talked a bit about the Tara scene, but the stuff for her character, then she doesn't give up Dawn when she easily could have done, and it's really good stuff.
Tara's
and
amazing.
It's such a heartbreaking scene to watch. Like,
even the lead
just
up
looks
to
so
it.
Painful, yeah.
I know, but
and
like
crushing
you got
the hand, that's really.
Oh, I know. But I just love that lead up where you see Tara sitting on the bench by herself and she's looking around, and then you just see the close up of the hand coming out to take her hand, and you think, oh, it's Willow, and then that gut punch when it turns around and it's Glory sitting there, and you just think, oh my God, no. And I also think that the way they decide that Tara is the key is actually quite fun, and actually does make sense for the stupid minions and their stupid brains. But, you know, the way they decide that it's Tara because she is the newest. It's like,
I like that.
That actually does
sort
make
of tracks.
sense. Yeah, that tracks. I also love Giles slamming the door into the minion's face, you know, when he's just casually talking to Willow, and then he's just like, boom.
Yeah.
And then when he threatens him, he's like, girls, get the rope. It's like, what happened? He changed his mind.
Yeah, the millions are That's so good. That's so funny.
Oh, the minions are fantastic. I love the minions and all of their names for glorious, most naughty causing feelings one, and all of that. So Willow in this episode. Oh, Willow in this episode. Like, wow. So I think overseas. Yeah, sorry.
Well, first of all, I've got to say, because her and Tara have a disagreement, which puts this whole thing.
Yes.
And I'm definitely on Tara's side in that disagreement. I think it was Willow that was being a bit harsh.
Yeah, definitely.
If you just want to recap what the
yes.
Was
so
about.
It starts with Tara, and they're talking about Buffy and Buffy's grief, and then Willow is all like, I feel a bit like the junior partner here because you've been doing everything longer, and then she mentions being out the longer and doing magic longer, and that's when Tara's like, oh, but you're way ahead of me in that it frightens me how powerful you're getting, and that's where we have the fight. And to be fair, it's like you mentioned this earlier, this is not a new thing. Oz, like you said, was in season 4, was talking about Willow going too far, and we even see at the beginning of the season in the Riley episode, when Willow and Tara are searching for school, Willow lights up the school with like this big ball of light, and Tara's like, how did you learn how to do that? And Willow's like, oh, you taught me. And she's like, yeah, I taught you tiny Tinkerbell light. What the hell is this? Then the fight kind of escalates and ends up going into this area of not just talking about magic, but talking about the girls and their sexualities. And is Tara insecure that Willow's suddenly going to turn back, which was a very interesting angle that I had never really considered. But apparently, I guess that would be a fear for... I mean, I can't really speak to lesbians and bisexuals because I'm a straight girl, but I know that there have been other shows where lesbians have dated bisexuals or dated women who have dated men, and there is that fear of, will you go back, or can you switch back, or is this a phase for you? But I always liked Willow's line, you're the only woman I've ever fallen in love with, because I think that really emphasizes that it's for Willow less about gender and more about the person, I think. I personally see Willow as bisexual because the show very clearly shows that she is attracted to men, but I do understand the people that believe that she's a lesbian. I think it's kind of like Schrodinger's Willow. Willow is both bisexual and a lesbian at the same time. No one's claiming that she's straight. It's just a matter of whether you believe she's bi or gay.
Because I think for a while I didn't really think about the bi thing. I sort of thought maybe the show was representing how you have phases in your life where you sort of discover new things about yourself. So and maybe she was always secretly homosexual but didn't know it, and then because that's something which is true to life. But
absolutely, it's compulsory heterosexuality, where you force yourself into heterosexual relationships and to hide like your true feelings. But for me, Willow doesn't read like that. Like, I've seen other characters in other shows that, like, for example, Jack on Dawson's Creek, for example, when he first turns up, he dates Joey, but when he comes out as gay, I buy him as fully gay, and Joey and him seem more like comp het. Whereas with Willow, she was very clearly in love with Oz and attracted to Oz. Like, you could see it. It didn't feel like comp het to me. It felt like, but I understand, because she does identify as gay later, I understand why people might say she's a lesbian. But that conversation between her and Tara, I thought was quite interesting. That angle.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I think over time I've changed on that.
It's more to do with the time. Like, if Buffy was written today, I reckon Willow would 100% be bi. But I mean, back then they had to fight just to make her gay, let alone bisexual, So it was probably just more of we can't actually say bisexual on TV. You can barely say it on TV now. So I think it was more a case of, it was just the time that it was written in that they had to go with, oh, she's gay now. But if it was written at a different time, she would have been bisexual. But Tough Love is, they have that fight, and it's a very upsetting fight, and obviously puts them in the position of being separated. But I think what Tara does in this episode is so extraordinary and amazingly selfless, and just because I don't remember which episode it is, but it's one like just after they found out who Glory is, and Giles mentions that she drains people's brains, and Tara's like, she's a brain sucker. And then she's like, God, at least vampires just kill you. So we already know that this is a huge fear for Tara. And yeah, that scene is done so well, with Willow trying to rush to get to her in time, and you only see like the flashes of Glory kind of like brain sucking her, and then you just see the empty shell of Tara left on the chair, and Willow going like full on, like this is the closest she's going to get to Dark Willow before we see Dark Willow. But I was noticing the way they shoot and frame her coming to the magic box is almost identical to the way they shoot and frame her coming to the magic box at the end of season 6. The door flies open. She runs through the magic box. She pulls all the books off the shelves. This time she's doing it manually, but in season 6 she'll do it telekinetically. And then she gets the biggest book of darkest magic she can, opens it, and drains the magic. And then this is the first time we see her eyes go black as well from the magic. And once again, it's for the exact same reason it's going to be in season 6. Someone has harmed Tara. And I think it's such a great moment. It's such great foreshadowing. And I also think it really shows how freaking powerful Willow is. No one has made even a dent on Glory. Not even like broken a fingernail. And I know it's only for a few minutes, but Willow actually manages to cause her pain, which I think is a great indication of how much power Willow actually has and how much power she can have when she's channeled by her emotions. Like, I always love a good overpowered person who's like powered by their emotions. There's a great episode of Charmed where Prue becomes an empath and is suddenly like uber super Prue because she's like channeling all the emotions. So I think that the end of Tough Love with that like with Willow like almost going dark and everything is such a great foreshadowing for season 6. What about you? Do you enjoy it too?
No, it's really good stuff. It's really strong, and that's something they do well in this season as well, the way they use Willow and Tara's magic as something which can be effective in the fight against Glory, because you also get that episode where they save Dawn basically by transporting her to somewhere else.
That's a great moment too.
Space,
shit moment.
So it's good then they can sort of use their magic at least as something to put off the threat of Glory and just use certain things. It's a good way to bring in and make them quite useful, their sort of magic and their abilities. So
Hanger ending with Glory bursting into the dorm room and Tara, poor Tara in her confused state. Oh, pure green energy. Oh God, it's horrible. And then of course leading into Spiral, which Spiral is such an action-packed episode, you know. It's the running, the fleeing episode, the being chased by the Knights of Byzantium, and oh my God, the Winnebago. Isn't that fantastic?
That's so
Spike
good.
with his goggles.
There's something very Mad Max and post-apocalyptic about that stuff.
It is definitely Mad Max, yes.
he has one of the great lines, which is, it's something like, "Buckle up, kids. Daddy's pulling down the lever."
I also love when Giles is driving. He's like, "Bloody step on it, Gramps." Step on what? I've driven tricycles with more power than this.
Buffy is justified in bringing him along, and kind of like the way she stands up to Giles and the others is like, this is not an argument. This is not a discussion.
I'll buy it, but I buy it less knowing how much Glory freaking kicked Spike's ass only 2 episodes ago. I Spike as a weapon because in the grand scheme of things, fine, I will buy it. But they could have done a little bit better by not showing Glory kicking his ass so badly. I love the fight on top of the Winnebago and, you know, the Knights of Byzantium chasing them around.
Spiral is the weakest of the last 3 episodes.
I agree. I do agree with that.
And I think it's probably just because it's more of a setup episode for the other two.
It is.
Also, I'm not that keen on the night stuff. I find some of the stuff with them a little bit boring.
I agree with that. I just think Buffy's fight with them is fun. But they are a bit... They feel almost like we just wanted to give Buffy one more hurdle, you know? It's almost like they weren't really that necessary because they don't... That being said, we do get some good exposition from the lead one, you know, that this is when we find out exactly
what... quite a good job.
Yeah. I like that actor. He's in Charmed. He's in Smallville. He's another one of those character actors that pops up a lot.
He's in 60 and an episode of that.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think it was irresponsible of Ben to go to them in the desert? Because on the one hand, he is a doctor. He can help Giles, and he's probably got that. But on the other hand, he's Glory, and he knows that Dawn is the key. So was that just actually a really dumb move of him?
I think it was a dumb move because that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it was his crush on Buffy. Maybe he was still hoping to get a bit of Buffy action.
Maybe,
but I agree.
Could be a bit of a doctor thing, like, oh, someone's someone's hurt. I must go and help them. But it's like, but are you helping or hindering, Benjamin? Let's think about what's really going on here. Like.
Because also another side of that, I did really enjoy Spike getting jealous, like him.
Yeah, that was funny.
Kept
that was
rolling
hilarious.
his eyes. That was like every time he said something else.
Oh no,
so funny.
Spike and Xander do have a scene that I actually found quite amusing and kind of funny. Like, I like just Xander being like, "Did I mention how much I don't like you today? Once or twice?" It's like, good, because I don't. How your digits doing? It's like Xander's telling Spike, I still don't like you, but I'm going to check and see how you're doing because you're here and you're helping, so I will grudgingly accept you. It's kind of like,
I always quite like scenes where you get odd parents like that who normally hate each other, or they don't really have a lot of scenes. They don't really have a lot to say, and just because of the circumstances, you get like a little moment of their bonding. I do quite like odd couple parent scenes like that.
But I definitely agree that Spiral is the weakest of these last 3 episodes. Like you said, it's mostly set up. We're mostly doing this to get us to the weight of the world and then go from there.
To the location and their hold up. I think that's really good. From then on, you get a lot of good scenes. Weight of the World, I think, is a really strong episode.
Man, so at the end of Spiral, you have, Glory appear and actually grab Dawn. And I just think, oh my God, just poor Buffy. Like, it is no wonder she goes into that state. Like, I just think even throughout all of Spiral, like when they get to like that location, they're all like, Buffy, what do we do? What do we do? And she's like, oh my God, just give me a minute. I don't know. And it's like, there's so much pressure on her. And I mean, I know she's used to that, but this is different. She's protecting her family now. It's the stakes are so much bigger. She's never run from a foe ever. This is the first time we ever see Buffy actually run from her enemy. She's always just kind of stood there and stood against whatever she's been facing. So the weight of the world, that mind walk that Willow does with her is amazing. And I think it's such a good look at what's going on inside Buffy's head and the guilt that she's feeling, and that reveal about that moment with the book moment that she keeps coming back to, where she confesses that for 1 second, just 1 second, she wanted everything to be over, even if that meant that Dawn was dead. And I just think this poor girl, I'm with Willow, she has carried the weight of the world on her shoulders since she was 16 years old. And she has just one moment where she wants to let it all go. Of course she's allowed to have that. But I just hate that Buffy is such a she's always so hard on herself. So of course that one moment would cause her to spiral and have such a deep reaction to it. It's just such a culmination of everything she's been through this season. And I think Sarah is so good. What about you? Do you enjoy the mind walk?
Yeah, I love that stuff. That stuff is right down my alley. Like, just this idea of going into someone's like psyche, and it's just very surreal. Like, it has a little bit of a feel of that scene in Eternal Sunshine. It's sort of a similar idea. Yes. When they're in like the subconscious, but once again, it's really fitting. And it's Willow who goes inside because she is Buffy's best friend, and they've got that history. And but I do love the theme of it. Then it's Buffy wrestling with herself, basically, but it's Willow, essentially her best friend, who has to go in and persuade her to pick herself back up, come out of it. And it's so well done, the whole thing, where you get like flashbacks of the past with a rare appearance by by the scummy father Hank.
Scumbag Hank Summers,
and,
Father of the Year.
And Joyce is right there, and there's just some really good stuff, like some really good direction, and you really get a sense of stakes and tension once again.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
It's a good episode.
Again, I really like that they mentioned that the spell is really powerful and dangerous. You know, Anya at the beginning is all like, you know, this spell could be really dangerous for you and for Buffy. Are you sure you know what you're doing? Again, it's showing that Willow is doing spells that maybe she's not quite ready for, but she does have the power for. I also really like seeing Willow take control at the beginning of the episode when they're all arguing and Spike and Xander are about to fight, and she telekinetically separates them, and she's all like, this is what's going to happen. Of course, obviously, the whole Ben is glory confusion thing is just absolute comedy gold. Good. I love it. And I don't often say this, but poor Spike, because he's just, you know, desperately trying to, like, he's like, is everybody here very stoned? Such a great line. And yeah, I just love that. Okay, so do we suspect that Ben and Glory have a connection? Yes, but what kind? It's just so good.
Yeah, because he smacks Xander on there that one.
Yeah, which is really funny. It's like, this is gonna be worth it.
Yeah.
and then when they go to Doc's and Xander's just like, Ben's Glory. Who's what now? It's like, Ben is Glory and Glory is Ben. It's like, yes, we're all on board, Xander. we know what's going on here. But yeah, and I also like the bits with Dawn, and of course we get some really good stuff with Ben and Glory. Ben is Glory. With Ben and Glory in this episode, with the two of them going back and forth, because remember, they discovered that obviously the spell is wearing off, Ben is starting to come through, Glory's starting to feel the human emotions, which she hates, and I absolutely love that breakdown. And I think the scene where they've got Dawn in the alley and they keep swapping between the two of them, Ben and Glory, I think that's a really fun scene.
That's really good.
It's filmed really well. I think this is when Ben's act is possibly giving one of his better performances as Ben, because he's actually got, you know, some emotion and stuff. And then, of course, we see him make the wrong decision. And but it's a decision that I think a lot of people would make, you know.
Understand it.
Yeah, it might be horrible, it might be selfish, but like Glory says, he just wants to live. Most people would do the same. And when you think about Ben, it's actually quite tragic, his life. I mean, he was essentially just created to be a holding cell for this god. And it's like, again, it's kind of like with Dawn. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the fact that your existence is only about because of some other big, powerful being? It's actually pretty crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, like, I think it does its job in the sense, and like I said earlier, it is interesting how it does subtly make Ben a little bit more of a villain than he was. And it probably, in a way, makes sense later on when Giles, in the final episode, does what he does. But like Dawn's reaction to the whole thing, where she actually says, I prefer if you... You know, if you're Glory, I don't want to see Ben. I'll deal with Glory.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's not bad special effects. You know, them switching back.
No, it's actually not too bad, especially for back then.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps that they got two actors who have very similar facial structures, so merging them is not too hard. But yeah, no, I think that's a great bit of acting. And I love the end of the episode when Buffy returns to the magic box and she's back to being herself, and Giles reveals that the key to the key is Dawn's blood, and that in order to save the world, if they open the portal, Dawn will have to die. And again, it's another one of those wham moments that just ends the episode and you're just left going, what in God's name is going to happen now? Which of course leads us to what I honestly think, and I don't think watching season 6 and 7 is going to change this, what I think is the best finale in Buffy. The gift is just like, there are no flaws in this episode. And that is rare for me to say. I actually think this episode is perfect. What about you?
It's a masterpiece. It's one of the best Buffy episodes ever. And I do agree, it's the best season finale. Probably Graduation Day is 2. After that, like, that's the second best one. And like, if people said that was their favourite, I wouldn't really complain. But no, I've got to go with you. I will actually say I do have one complaint, and I think you normally get this where if you look hard enough there is one, but it's just a small one. It's the fact that they build Doc up as a threat, and then Buffy just shoves him off
the side. Yeah.
Because actually, that is another good use of Spike. The fact that he puts himself on the line, he runs up there, and he gets beaten up so bad and just tossed up.
I know, but this is another thing that makes me go. No, I'm not going to have a go against his character here. I'm not going to have a go against like what his motivations are. For me, it was just kind of like, see, he's kind of useless. Why are you bringing him along? He's just been tossed off the side again. But I get what you're saying. It's not a bad moment for Spike. It's just like, come on, dude, be a bit more useful. This is what I mean about you could take Spike out of a season and literally nothing would change. He makes no difference. But that's okay. We'll leave that. But that's
my one small complaint. Okay, maybe they could have restructured it a bit so you had a bit more of a fight with Buffy and Doc, because he was obviously built up.
I guess her big fight was supposed to be Glory, so to have her do like another fight after that, it was kind of maybe a bit superfluous, but I do understand where you're coming from. But if that's the only tiny nitpick that you've got, I'd still say that's pretty damn good. I just think, first of all, I remember when I first saw this episode, when I was first watching, the previously on really confused me because they went from like right from the first episode and I was like, this is what they usually do in final seasons. Is this the final season? I thought there was another season. But I realized it's because it's the 100th episode. So you actually get frames from every single episode up until the 100th in that lead up. If you slow it down, you will see it every single episode.
Yeah, so that's it's really impressive to watch.
And then just leads up to that great opening scene. I love that they just opened the episode with just Buffy staking a vampire, and I just love the line of, but you're just a girl, and then just, that's what I keep telling everyone. And I'm just like, it's just a really great way to emphasize Buffy and who she is and where she is on her journey. And then, of course, we get that really intense scene in the magic box, with them discussing Dawn and can you kill Dawn? And I think that Giles gets some great characterization there. And I think that really emphasizes Giles's pragmatism, which we will obviously see come back up at the end of this episode. And I was saying to Stephen, I wonder if that's a Watcher thing, because Wesley is actually very much like that as well. Like Wes has that ability to put emotion aside and actually do what needs to be done. And Stephen and I theorized that we believe that if they hadn't been able to stop Glory and they hadn't figured out the loophole, that Giles would have killed Dawn. We actually believe that. We think that if he could have gotten to her, he would have done it. As much as he loves Dawn and as much as he loves Buffy, if he could get past Buffy, which is unlikely, but if he could, he would be able to do that. He'd be able to kill Dawn to save the world, because I think he is that pragmatic and that, he knows.
Yeah, he has that line, doesn't he, to Buffy at one point where he says it is my duty to protect the world, and that's sort of got to come first. And
unfortunately, yes.
That's what I like about that stuff, is you can definitely see both sides, but it's pretty strong stuff, because Buffy is almost saying, because bearing in mind she's got so much history with these people, it's almost, she's basically saying, I will take you out. I will take you down if you try and stop me from saving Dawn.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really the first time we've ever seen Buffy not put the world first. It's like she even says in this, she killed Angel, who she loved more than anyone else. And she did it because she knew she had to, but she won't go. And I think maybe if she hadn't lost her mum, it maybe might have been more open to possibility, but she is so, all she's got left is Dawn now, so you can completely understand why she's unwilling to kill her, but you can completely understand where Giles is coming from too. It's like Giles says, it's like, okay, fine, but like if you don't do this, Dawn will still die, everyone will die, like either way she's going to die, but you can't ask Buffy to kill her sister. That's just crazy talk. So
I think another good thing about the episode is just the pacing of it, because I like them. We get quite a long build up to actually like the big like final battle, if you like them, because it's at least half of the episode just them building up, and then discussing strategy and doing various things, and you obviously get a lot more with Glory and Dawn at the site of the thing. So I think they pace it just about perfectly, where it is roughly half the episode then for the big final battle.
It's really good.
I also really like the Xander proposal scene to Honor. That's really good.
Plus, I love them having sex just as the world's about to end, because it's 100% something that Xander and Anya would do, last night on Earth and all of that. And I was about to say we get some great character moments, and that is a great scene, that one. I also love the Willow and Tara scene. It's sad, but also beautiful, where Tara slaps her and then Willow's like, I'm going to bring you back.
Yeah.
And it's just really, they just build it really well. All of the emotion, all of the stakes, they even have Buffy tell Spike, not all of us are going to make it through this. And I think for the first time in a long time, you actually do feel like we might lose one of the Scoobies. And, well, we obviously do, but, we haven't felt that for a while, that actual, like, our characters are actually in danger and they could actually not make it. And I think that's a really intense feeling to go into this finale with. And, then when they actually get to the side of the fight, which, by the way, I absolutely love the tower. I think the tower is a great set piece. And I think
really like that.
It really works for the fight that we get between Glory and Buffy on the tower. And, of course, I love the misdirection with the Buffy bot. That is brilliant. That's
such a good way to bring that back in. And I really love like the strategy and the way they set the whole plan, and how everyone is sort of important in their roles. I really like Xander with like the big metal ball, the concrete ball.
The glorified bricklayer picks up the spare. He's so good.
So good. I also like
love
Willow
Anya rushing in with her bat.
Oh, which they used in the credits later. That's really good.
Yes, they do. Yes.
So that's her chipping in, which is fun. I also like Willow, like into Spike's mind. I don't know how do you describe it, but just
telepathically talking to Spike. That is cool. Again, showing how powerful Willow's becoming. And I also, of course, love Willow restoring Tara's memory. That part always makes me tear up. The I got so lost and I found you. I will always find you, which is just gorgeous and so beautiful. And once again, just showing how powerful Willow is actually getting. And Glory in the final fight is fantastic. I especially love when she knocks the bot's head off and she's just like, whoa, the Slayer's a robot. Did everyone else know the Slayer was a robot? And she's so confused. And her fight with Buffy is fantastic. I love the troll hammer. Although, you know what? Something weird is going on with Xander. All right? This troll hammer can take out Glory, and yet Xander gets hit in the face with it in triangle twice. And he's still fine. So I think we need to look into what's going on with Xander Harris. Something a bit strange. But the troll hammer is fantastic. And that final fight with them chasing each other up and down the tower is so good. I really like that fight. I think it's a lot of fun.
That tower, like you said, is such a good visual bit of architecture, and it's so well choreographed, like all the movements up and down, and it's a really nice place to have this fight. And the way it all ends up, it's so fitting. Then I mean, in a way, it's Giles that kills Gloria ultimately, because he makes that tough decision to kill when she's in Bem form. And that's a little bit of Ripper coming out once again, isn't it?
Little bit, but I think it is more just Giles knowing that he has to do what he has to do, that sometimes he has to do, like he says to Ben, Buffy's a hero. She's not like you and me. And so Giles has to do the dirty work. I remember the first time I watched this episode, I can still remember it, because I remember just going, Giles? I was so shocked that Giles did that. It was just like, oh my God, like, wow, that is a dark moment. Because it's not just that he kills him, it's the way he kills him. It's such a close, personal way to kill someone, to smother them to death, It's pretty intense, that scene. But the fact that they never come back to it, I think, is just emphasizing that it's just Giles. He just knows. Like I said, Wesley has this a bit too. So I'm guessing it's a bit of a watcher trait. Sometimes you have to do the dirty work. And again, Stephen and I were talking about this, was saying it had to be done because sooner or later Glory would have reemerged and she would have made Buffy pay. So, and also even at the beginning of the episode, remember Xander actually says, what about Ben? I mean, he's, I know he's innocent, but he's not Dawn innocent. I mean, we can kill a regular guy. Oh God, and you can tell that he's already feeling like, oh, should not have said that. But no, I think that was a great moment and a very powerful moment, and really showing like this side to Giles that we've not really seen before, that really dark, cold, pragmatic side that says, unfortunately, this is the safest way. We barrel to the end of our episode, which, all honesty, the final emotional peak of this episode with Buffy and Dawn up on the tower is just amazing. First of all, I think that the Dimensions opening, I think this is actually the most apocalyptic that this show has gotten so far. Like, I know we've had threats of apocalypses before, but this is the first time that you actually see like Sunnydale like under siege, like you see the cracks in the footpath, you see Town Hall being melted, you see the dragon coming out.
Yeah, you see all the dragon. It's so good. I love like those.
It feels visuals. Apocalyptic, so it feels like, no, Jesus Christ, like this really is the end of the world. And I think that Dawn, once again, Dawn does not get enough credit. Dawn was going to jump. A lot of people seem to forget this, but that girl at 15 years old was going to jump off that tower into that portal. She's definitely got the summer sacrifice gene. And I just think that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing that this 15-year-old girl who's not a Slayer, who's not chosen to any sort of higher calling, sees what's happening and says, I need to end this. Like, I think that was just amazing. And for me, that just really, I think fans need to acknowledge that more about Dawn's character, that she was willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah, like everything about that scene and the stakes on it and what exactly is going to happen. I mean, watching that at the time, you probably wouldn't have guessed that Buffy was going to sacrifice herself.
No.
And it's such a good misdirect. And yeah, the whole season's been built into that moment, and it is so well done. I like like she whispers something to Dawn, but it's after she's like sacrificed herself we actually get to hear that. That's a really good choice. And the music again is, I was going to say, emotional.
The score is beautiful.
And yeah, once again they gave us one of the most iconic Buffy images in her diving into the thing. I mean, that's been reproduced so many times, and I think if you just want a good snapshot of what makes the Buffy character the character and why she is this selfless, heroic figure, it is that moment that sort of like encapsulates it so well. And she's such an amazing character, and that voiceover at the end is beautiful when you hear what she whispered to Dawn. And I just love the tell Giles that I figured it out and I'm okay. And then of course the be brave, live for me, and that final shot of her headstone, as if that isn't the most perfect epitaph ever. She saved the world a lot. It's like, that's great.
I have always believed that this is where the show should have ended. I think this would have been such an amazing ending. And I think, I know that people don't like that if it had ended here, Buffy would have died. But given that we find out that she was at peace and she was happy and everything was fine, I think this is actually a fitting ending for her. And the show feels complete here. You can just theorize after this that Giles went back to England, or maybe he adopted Dawn, maybe she moved in with Willow and Tara, Xander and Anya got married, and everyone was fine, it's such a great place to end it. And I don't think I'm going to change my mind on that, because I particularly do not have a huge fondness for season 6 or 7. So I really think this is where the show should have ended. What's your opinion on that?
Okay, it's one of those. I can see it both ways. I think you are right. I think this is the perfect ending. Like, it just makes sense. Then this is the sacrifice she makes. And that's a great way to end the show. Like, that's no doubt about it. I think I get a bit more out of the later seasons, and I do like some of the things they explore. And for me, at least, there's enough good things in them to justify. Because, for example, not to get into the season 6 stuff yet, but I do actually like that they explore Buffy's return and what it's like to come back from the dead. I mean, I think that's some interesting stuff to explore. But, you know, and I think it's just one of those, I've said this before, I think you're never going to complain about one of your favourite shows getting more. Like, you're just not. Like, you might argue that they should have maybe went out on the ultimate high and that's it. But as a fan, deep down, you're not really going to complain. You're going to be up for more.
I got to say, that's actually where you and I differ. I am basically more of a fan of quality over quantity. I would rather have a show that was only 2 seasons and was fantastic than a 7-season show that got bad. So for me, I actually would have preferred to just have Buffy finish at season 5. But that's just me. And I know I'm a bit of an outlier when it comes to that. I've just been disappointed by too many shows that have gone on for too long. And just no.
Oh, I don't agree. I don't disagree with that. And I'm definitely like that with some things. But I think this is just a part of fandom. I think to me, and maybe it's just because you have over time soured a bit on Buffy, whereas for me, I think it is as good as people say. I think it is one of the best shows of all time. And so it probably is that thing of fandom where ultimately, even if you can be honest and say, yeah, this isn't good enough or that this isn't that great, you probably still prefer. I mean, obviously, if it went on and on, you maybe then would say, yeah, I'm a bit sick of this now. But like, it might just be that I see a bit more merit in those final 2 seasons than you do. Maybe with you have it a bit with Charmed, because Charmed has that where...
Oh, absolutely, Charmed has that.
Yeah, but it's still your favourite show of all time. So in a way, you sort of overlook that. So I think we all...
If we didn't have season 6, we wouldn't have Once More with Feeling, which is one of my favourite episodes ever. So, you know, we've got... And look, there's definitely stuff that I enjoy in season 6 and 7. And I mean, particularly, I mean, we'll get into it again, but like Dawn, for example, her growth is fantastic. And, you know, there's stuff that I like. I feel like the final 2 seasons are just nowhere near as strong as the first 5 seasons, and that the way the show actually does end is not as strong as if it had ended here. But that is just my opinion. There is some good stuff in season 7, and obviously a lot of fans love season 6 and 7, you know, so this is just my personal opinion, and we'll see how we go when we rewatch them. But this was a great finale to a great season. I mean, I think this is the longest Buffy talk we've had. I'll always stick by the fact that I think this has the strongest arc in the entire series. Glory, the key, and that arc is so well written. The way they, just like we've talked about, the way they reveal everything bit by bit, the misdirection, the mystery surrounding it, the purpose, like just everything about it. Claire Kramer being her fantastic, beautiful, most naughty, sweaty feelings causing oneself. And, you know, Michelle Trachtenberg is a great addition. Like I said, for me, this season gets dragged down a tiny little bit by some of the Riley and Spike stuff and some of the more weaker episodes. But it's still a great season, and it's probably still one of my favorite seasons and one of the strongest seasons, I think. So I had a lot of fun rewatching this season when I was watching it. So it was definitely fun to revisit.
And I think when we get to the end of the whole show, we will do rankings for the seasons.
Absolutely.
What order we would put them in.
Yes, definitely.
Which could be fun. So, okay. What would you rate, this season?
I'm going to give this season a 9 out of 10. And the only reason I wouldn't give it a perfect 10 out of 10 is because of those very small issues that I have. And that's pretty much all that drags it down. I think this is a fantastic season. Like I said, great characterization, great overall arc, fantastic villain, and a really, really great finale. And really, like we said, even the episodes that aren't that great are still pretty good. So there's not a lot to complain about. The Spike stuff is obviously a personal thing for me, and like I said, is coming off my retrospective, looking at it through the lens of season 6 and 7. So I can acknowledge that that is more like a personal issue rather than an issue with the season. And obviously no one likes Riley. So, just forget Riley. So it loses a point for that. But yeah, I'm going to go 9 out of 10 because this season is so solid. What about you?
Okay, so I think this is my favourite season overall of the show, and it holds up really well. Like, probably some of the stuff earlier in the season, probably because it is earlier in the season, and then it builds to a great, like, second half, middle of the season is really good. Like, it probably benefits from that, whereas if that stuff was later in the season, it probably would have dragged it down. But
yeah.
No, I think this is for the storytelling, for the drama. I think the majority of the main characters deliver and get really good arcs and moments, and there's just so much great storytelling, some really standout gem of an episode. You've got one of the best villains and arguably the best season finale of the lot. So I'm going to go 10. I'm going to give it the perfect 10.
Very nice. Oh, I can't argue with that. That's like, it's such a good season. So it's just personal preferences that are stopping me from giving it just that little bit much. So a little bit more, but that's fantastic.
So yeah, because for a lot of people, it's this or season 3 for their favourite season.
Yes.
Thing, but
I get that.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that was a big discussion, and I knew that we were going to have. So it seems like when it comes to like most of the characterization and the overall arc and the villain, we agree. We just disagree on the Spike stuff, which I think is going to be a theme going forward. So look out for more of that, people. But and also remember that I am right, not Keith.
Well, it's not so much. Like I said, I think in season 6 I can see it a bit more. So I don't think we'll argue so much.
Season 7 will be the interesting one because obviously we have a big game changer in season 7. So that I think will be interesting again. But we'll see how we go going forward.
But then those reviews will be interesting, I think, for a different reason, because I am slightly more the defender of those seasons than you are. So I think from that point of view, whereas we were mostly in agreement on this season, and we have been on a lot of the seasons. So let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share us out on social media. I will say, when we do our roundup video, I'll update my list and read it out on that video.
Nice.
I've not done it yet, and we have been here a very long time, so we'll round this up and I'll return with that. We'll be back soon with our roundup of the season, where we do our best and worst episodes and also MVPs of the season, which will be very interesting. So Rachel, if you want to promote your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays on TV shows and movies. I do have a few Buffy centric videos. As I mentioned, I do have one that's top 10 best character episodes, so that's a fun one to watch because I do have a few episodes from this season in there. And my Tumblr is also linked through my YouTube. So Keith usually puts a link in the description unless my opinions are better than his, like they are today. So come and follow me everywhere.
Yeah, you haven't got a hope today. So it was tempting to end with a Spike line, but I suppose, it's only fitting. The hardest thing in the world is to live in it. Is that next season? No, that is this season.
No, that's this
one. They return to it next season. Yeah. Okay, I'll end like that. The hardest thing in this world is to live in it. So true. And yeah, see you soon, guys. Bye.